Thank you, everyone, for giving the time of your day to us. Today's speakers will be Chen Du and Bob Beggett. Chen has been with ABB for the past 14 years, and is currently the product line manager for Symphony Plus for Harmony Tool. Bob Beggett has been with us for the past 27 years. His specialty is software engineering tools with a focus on third-party protocols. Both of them and all of us are located in Cleveland, Ohio. The details are listed here in terms of contact, and obviously this is recorded, so you can reach out to us later. Earlier this year, we had started the ABB's webinar series focusing on our flagship ABB Ability Symphony Plus automation platform. So in line with that, today we'll be talking about the latest generation of S Plus engineering. The version is 2.1. From a functional standpoint, oops, where did I lost a couple of slides. Hold on. There we go. From a functional standpoint, we had discussed earlier about the controller, the I/O, and today we're going to talk about engineering. So engineering sits on a networking layer. It talks to the controller, the operations, and to the clients from the computer standpoint. Moving to the next slide. So in terms of history of ABB Symphony Plus, we started from the 1980s in the Bailey world. So the S Plus engineering world started with EWS, which is the engineering workstation, which then morphed and evolved into the Win Tools, Composer, and now into S Plus engineering. The beauty of this entire system is if you have a project that was developed in EWS or Composer, that can be ported over to S Plus engineering without losing your intellectual property. So your tuning parameters or any other aspects of the project which you have built up in the past 20 years can now be ported directly into S Plus engineering. So why do we focus on the engineer? As you're seeing, as time is going by, more and more engineering activities are being pushed to the field. So you're seeing more work being done during commissioning and startup phase, and not just in the engineering phase at our offices. So we decided that, okay, we need to have an efficient platform, something that's easy, intuitive, and also reliable. So that's when we started coming out with the S Plus engineering releases. And the latest one, 2.1, was released a few months ago in June 2018. One of the main things for us is we wanted a platform that's not only able to serve the current needs, but can be expanded into the future. With the digitalization now being rampant, we understand that a lot more data is available. So we wanted a platform that can handle the big data and be able to convert that into meaningful information, not just right now, but also in the future. So, without any more ado, I'd like to hand this over to Chen Du, who's the product line manager, and go through what is new in 2.1, and then we'll go over to Bob Beggett to show you a demo of 2.1. But
okay, thanks, Reno. Good afternoon, everyone. So yes, Reno mentioned, Symphony Plus engineering software came from Composer, but beyond Composer, with the target to try to provide universal and fully integrated engineering environment for all the engineering activity and function. Not only your control logic, but also your Profibus, build bus, device management, configuration, and also new communication prototype, protocol, IEC 6150, and more. And Symphony Plus engineering was initially released as version 1 back in 2014. And the version 2.1 is the latest version we just released in June this year. And for the operating system, it supports Windows 10, LTSB 2016, and Windows Server 2016. This LTSB stands for Long-Term Service Branch. That's a special license agreement with enterprise user or application. So if your corporation already has such enterprise agreement with Microsoft, I believe you can continue to use that. But if not, you can buy this version through ABB. Just contact your account manager. And then for the licensing support, the Ethernet adapter MAC address is always supported as before. But if you're using the dongle and if you upgrade from the previous version, and then if you're using any version 1.3 or earlier, then you need to replace your dongle to a new type. That's the new type supported by Windows 10. The older dongle you cannot use. But if you're coming from the 1.4, that's the first Windows 10 support engineering tool version, and you can continue to use the dongle. It's the same dongle. And then for the HMI compatibility, if you choose to upgrade your HMI also to Symphony Plus Operation 3.1, that's the version released at the same time with Engineering 2.1, and you can get a new and enhanced, more tightly integrated workflow. We will talk about that later. But if you choose to stay with older version like Operation 1.x, 2.x, or you're using XA, this version, 2.1 version, still support this HMI, but it just use like the older workflow. Basically, just export from your control engineering or composer database for the tag, for your trend or maybe alarm, those information. But you just continue to use your old one, old workflow. Okay, and also in 2.1, we brought a lot of improvement and enhancement. There's one core technology change. We replaced the quite old Microsoft Jet database engine by a more modern state-of-art SQL database engine. Probably you won't, as a user, you probably won't see any difference on the surface. But by just replacing this new technology, and it supports higher capacity, and also it has a better support for the more modern technology like a multiple user network environment, multiple core, newer operating system. So as a user, you will see very improvements on the stability and performance improvements. For the older version, like in WinTool or in Composer, if you are handling very, very large project, you probably knew there's a chance the project maybe get corrupted or sometimes crash, and this one will give you a much, much more stable work condition. And also for the performance, anything related to the database. For example, you are opening CLD, it will check into the database for your cross-reference, for your sheets, and even compiling your configuration. You will get much, much better performance. So that's one core technology change. Probably you won't see on the surface, but you will get a lot of benefit from it. And then at the same time, when we release Engineering 2.1, we also release a couple of new hardware. And engineering, of course, start to support this new hardware. And then there's another brand new function we added into this version. Is we call the Harmony Soft Controller. So this function is basically just allow the PC, your engineering station, to execute your CFG configuration in the same way as in the controller. So you can just use this to verify, to check your logic, and to do some simple simulation without using a physical controller. Next slide, please. So you can see from the screenshot, this functionality is fully integrated in the engineering tool. So on any controller in your hardware tree, you can right-click, and there's an additional new command item called Enable Soft Controller. And then when you enable it, it just loads your CFG file and start to run. And then you can configure special happy connection. And then you can just do your monitoring and tuning, and then you can see your runtime value in exactly the same way as you are connecting to your physical controller. And this is the initial release, so there's still some limitation. For example, you can only run one soft controller instance on one PC. And also, it just mimic what your physical controller can do. So if you want to, for example, do some simple simulation to see the logic to get inputs and outputs and get feedback, for physical controller, you still need to configure some simple simulation logic to connect to it. Here's the same. You need to do that in the same way. But yeah, that's where in the future enhancement, we already plan maybe for the future version, so we can probably run multiple soft controller instances on one PC, and also even to establish communication between this soft controller. Or we can add some simple simulation, like to give you a simple right click, to give a triangle signal or a square signal directly from the soft controller. That's something we can plan for the future. It's just so far we're not there yet. And also to clarify, this function is supposed to mimic your controller with checkout or for verification. There's no plan to make this to become a training simulation like snapshot or frozen or connecting to your third-party process model. No, there's no intention to do so for this one. Okay, next slide, please. Another enhanced feature we introduced in this version is we support virtualization. More and more customers are asking for this feature. Now we are formally tested and officially supported by VMware software. So now you can use in your running plans, and if you got problem, it will be officially supported by ABB. And then there's some existing tool. We provide some enhancement. One is the system topology tool. This is a tool embedded inside we call engineering workbench, and it basically contains all your hardware, especially the network device information, your PC and your switch, your controller, and those information later on can be used by operation engineering. For example, your PC, your Ethernet address, and your how many, and also what function, server or client, they can be reused directly by the operation engineering later. And we added some, makes just more easy to use and more efficient by some templates and some wizards. So it's easy for user to create this diagram, system topology diagram from scratch. And then there's another one in the previous version. We had a power tool we call CLD editor. That tool requires special license besides the basic license. And that one is based on very old VB technology, so we just replaced the functionality by the bug engineering tool. And this tool actually exists in the previous version. If you are using engineering 1.1 or 1.2, you should see this bug engineering tool. But in this version, we just enhance it to be able to, you can retrieve the information from your CLD. For example, your CLD name, function code specification, and tags, and tag, and then you can just retrieve by the rule you define, and then you can make some bug change. You can even export to Excel, and then you make change and re-import into your system to be more efficient. And also there's another one previously by this CLD editor power tool with a special license. And now we make it available in the basic products. So you don't need to pay for it anymore. That's we call explode and merge. Explode is basically to turn your one CLD with multiple sheets becoming multiple CLD. And the merge is on the reverse side. If you have multiple CLD, you can merge into one CLD with multiple sheets. So this function is just become a right-click command menu directly from your controller or CLD. And then there's a new function, configurable function code. Actually, this is not brand new in this version. We introduced this CFC function in version 1.3. This function is basically allow you to pack your configuration logic, control logic, become one single function code in a very similar way as the standard function code. So this is you can develop your own control logic library, so it can be efficient. It's tested, and then you can later your other engineer or technician can just reuse it without knowing the detail, and also can make your control logic drawing more cleaner. But in this version 2.1, we added more features. We support we call block protection. That's basically a black box. So you pack this function code, and your user will not be able to see what's configured inside. And also, we support multiple tags. We support customized specification description. Next slide, please. So here just show some example. For CFC, later we will give a more detailed demo. But basically, you just configure your logic, and then you can assign, also design your shape, and also the inputs, outputs, what's the original point, and then you can map the inputs to your CFC, to your function code, and output, and also spec. You can hide some spec. They are not exposed to your user, but you can also expose certain spec to be able later to be configured by your user. And then in this version, in the previous version, your user gets this file, CFC file. They install it into their project, but when after downloading into the controller, they can still see all the loose block, function block inside. So the user will be able to figure out how it works. But with this new block protection, or we call black box, and it just it exposes the spec you define. The user cannot see any detail inside your block. And also before we support the exception report block to be mapped become a tag. But in the previous version, even you have multiple exception report block, you are allowed only to map one tag. But in this version, you are allowed to map multiple tags. Next slide. And then some other enhancements we support DCS and SCADA application. SCADA is basically just not using maybe ABB controller, but just use the Symphony Plus operation to use some standard protocol like 104 DNP Modulus to retrieve the data from other device or controller. But for install-based customer, there's also benefit, like you are running your DCS, but you probably want to integrate another third-party PLC, running some auxiliary system, and you want to have a universal operation for that. And then you can use this feature. We call vertical integration. That's basically just let your operation HMI to directly talk to third-party device by this standard protocol. And now we support this mix. Horizontal, that means through the controller, for example, SCI 200 or SPC model bus. Yeah, controller can also do this. We call horizontal, and then you can mix with the vertical. That's your HMI directly talk to this third-party device. You can have an integrated one universal engineering environment to handle both. And another improvement we talk about, we have a more tight integrated operation engineering. Actually, in the previous version, like a 1. Engineering 1.2, 1.3, we had another component called composer operation. But it's kind of, we call loosely integrated. It's not delivered with the engineering. You need to buy or get from some other channel, and you need to install additionally, and the integration is not really tight. But in this version, for operation, Symphony Plus operation 3.1, this operation engineering is embedded inside the engineering package. So every time you install your engineering 2.1, you automatically get this operation engineering. Next slide. Yeah, so this one, if you are using operation on the screenshot on the upper side, you probably recognize this is exactly the user interface in operation configuration, database configuration. So it's basically engineering have this fully integrated operation engineering. You can do configuration for almost everything for operation. And then you can deploy your data when it's done, deploy the data remotely to your runtime server, the operation runtime server. So you don't need to just do configuration as before in different place or copy over from different PC, or you need to run to another PC to work on something else. Now you get a universal environment to do everything from control your device, your operation, just on the engineering workplace. There's a certain feature also, like it supports like we call parallel deploy. So if you can configure multiple runtime server, and you can deploy at the same time to different server with maybe even different configuration. And also there's a incremental deploy, like I already deploy, but then I make some small change to my configuration, and I can just choose to deploy the changed part I made. So that's we call incremental deploy. And also there's some function you can compare what's in our engineering station and what's in the runtime server. It can tell the difference, and then you can make correct judgment to do so. And also by providing this integrated environment, all the data are correctly linked together. For example, you can, from the CLD and directly to call the operation tag window, and you can modify some tag. And also from the tag, you can also directly jump to the CLD to find the logic. And also for like the vertical integration we just talked about, if you are configuring some like OPC or vertical module bus, and then you can do your configuration in engineering environment, and those information will be automatically retrieved and to generate some information inside the operation. So this will give you a more efficient engineering on like vertical engineering, and also the like topology tool, some PC like IP address or function, those information can also be directly reused. And also with this integrated environment, in the future, yeah, we can bring more integration. For example, maybe global search, for by a name, we can find all the relevant information, either CLD or configuration, or tag or display in the future. And also we can do more navigation or more validation since all the data are just in one single environment. Okay, so that's basically the introduction on all the new feature for 2.1. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chen. So Renaud, I think right now we have a poll question.
Yeah. So the question is more in relation to, what you heard just now. What we wanted to know is understand more about what do you use in your site. So if you could take a couple of minutes to let us know what feature that you use the most. And in addition, if you have any questions on what you've heard so far, please feel free to type it up in chat.
So right, if people are making their selection there, we've got probably the majority of them are actually still using Composer.
Okay. Yeah, it's good feedback to get. I mean, mostly if we understand what you're using, we will know how to be more useful for you in the future. You want to move forward, Bart?
And in just a couple seconds here, it'll let everyone know just sort of what those answers were. So right, so I think at this time, Renaud, we're ready to hand it over to Bob.
Okay.
Thanks, Bart. Okay, guys, I'm going to give you some demonstrations on S+ engineering, some of the features that Chen was talking about earlier in his presentation. Knowing that most of you from that poll result are still using Composer, some of this will look definitely new to you. So I'll kind of go a little extra explanation here. So this is your new user environment. So before, you should just call it Composer, and then you would just have the Composer project. Now we have a new engineering environment that contains all the different software inside one look and feel. Some of the issues with having just Composer on a machine is we've gotten comments from the customers for security. Usually, as everybody would know, if you could just get on the machine, then you could open up Composer and you could have your way with whatever you wanted to. You can look at the project, you could go in there and put things online, take things offline, and they wanted a little bit more secure features in the new product. So one of the features we did is we installed a thing called user management. Let me log in here. And what this does is this allows you to assign roles to all the users that are logged on your machine. So not only do you have to log on to the machine, now you must have the right role to be able to use the different features of the software. So there's basically 4 main roles for engineering. There's the S+ system admin. That user can create users. It can delete users. There's an S+ engineer admin. That user can go ahead and create projects, do backups of projects, restores a project, delete projects. And then there's just plain S+ engineer. And that role then just gives the ability to open up the project and do your normal engineering functions. So if I were to click on one of these users on the left-hand side, you would see on the right-hand side that this guy has the SP engineer, engineer admin, and system admin role. So he's like everything. If I just went to engineer 1, you see this user only has engineer role. So he'll just be able to open up a project. So this is how we're kind of like putting in some more security into our system. And then there was other plans where it's like, hey, we have multiple units at our plant. There was multiple engineers that are assigned to specific units. Is there a way that we could assign a specific project to a specific user? So if you go into this tab called projects, on this system now I have two projects, and you can see that engineer 1 is assigned both of them. If I went to this guest, you see he's not assigned to a project, or the system engineer is assigned to both of them. So not only do you have to have the role to be able to open up the project, you also have to be assigned to the project. So again, if you had a plant where you had multiple units, you want one guy to work in one project and another guy to work in another project, this is how you could get that accomplished with user management. This can be run on domain systems, obviously. It'll create the users on the domain, or the customer can have the users already defined in the domain, and we'll read those out, and then we'll be able to assign roles. Or, of course, it could be done in a work group. If it's done in a work group, then from one engineering station, as you modify the users, add or delete them, it automatically gets propagated out to all the other machines. So you don't have to go to every single machine and add that user on it if you're in a work group. So that's user management. The next thing we have is project admin. So another couple requests that we have from the customers that, you know, we have Composer, you know, we like it and all, but we can always forget like where the latest project was, because really all you need is just a folder zipped up and move somewhere and unzip it. It could be on the C drive, the D drive. There's really no like main structure to where the actual all the files would be. So we introduced this thing called project admin. So from here, you can create projects from scratch, obviously back them up and restore them. And what happens is it puts it in a standard structure here on the D drive under Symphony Plus. You'll see we got projects. So here's my two projects, and then under backup, you can see I have a backup of this complete project. So what it does when you make a backup from project admin, it'll automatically add the date to the end of the folder name. So you can keep making backups throughout, you know, the weeks or whatever, and you'll have each date. And you can come in here and you can name it, say, you know, this is, I modified boiler feed pump A or whatever you did to that file. And then when you go to restore them, they'll just show up in a pick list. And then you can restore them on your project. You can pick which ones you want. So it gives it a little more structure to where all the files are. If you wanted to send the files to like another machine, like say to the simulator or something, you would just do a backup here, and you would zip up that folder in the backup folder, and you would copy it to the backup folder of the simulator, and then you would just do a restore, and it would restore the complete project. If you had Composer Field stuff or third-party integration, everything gets included and everything gets moved over. So it's a nice, easy way to back up your projects and move your projects around. So that's that. So I just want to give a little overview of what S+ engineering looks like. See that most of you guys are using Composer. You've probably never seen this. And then what I'll do is I'll go through now and we'll talk a little bit about configurable function codes. Let me call project. Oh, actually, sorry. So there's two projects. So this standard CFC right here that you see, when you create a configurable function code, you have to create it in what we call a library project. So this is where it's developed. So this is where you're saving all your information. You're actually making a function code that you can use. So I'll go ahead and I'll open this up and I'll show you how that's done. So here, when I actually open the project for you that are working with Composer, there's a bunch of more information now that you can put in. You can put customer details, ABB details, consultant information. I know if you had a project from a long time ago, you always think, well, who worked on that project way back when? All that information now can be saved on your project. So what we'll do is we'll go to Control Engineering. Now this is the same look and feel as you're used to. This is the same Composer environment. So none of this has changed. So what we'll do is we'll go to the Exchange folder, and this is where we created a folder for the configurable function codes that we're going to create. And what we have done is ABB has came up with a library of configurable function codes. And I'm just going to give you a little demo of one of those. So if I open this up, you'll see there's a list of like 30 different function codes here that we created. And what we'll do is if you wanted to create a new one, you would just right-click, New Configurable Function Code, and it would make a brand new one. So once it's made, you have a couple options here of things that you need to fill out, you need to create for your function code. So the first one, obviously, is the drawing, is the actual logic internal to that, into that function code. So you can see here, there's a lot of logic here. It's kind of crazy looking. But again, nobody will see that because it's going to be inside your function code. So this is the actual running logic page. You'll have an input mapping. So we'll call up here. This is going to create. So input number 1 on my function code is going to get connected to all these internal function codes and the actual point, the actual input address. So as we can see here, we have 21 inputs up to this function code. And this is where they all go to internally. We need to do the same for outputs. And here we have 13 outputs. Now this is a really advanced function code. There are much simpler ones with just a couple inputs, but I'll show you. We can also say you have like tuning constants that you want to be able to tune. So you can map specs. So a lot of these specs can be, you can send values into timers or into high-low blocks or whatever you want to put in there, and you could manipulate how that block works online. And these will show up as standard specs when you drop them on your drawing, and I'll show you that in a little bit. You have the ability to map tags. So inside this function code, there's 3 tags. They're all MSDDs, and these are the tag names that it's going to show up when I do assign tag later on. And then lastly, but not least, this is where you actually draw your function code, how you want it to look. So you can use your functions up top. You can make it, a long rectangle. You can do whatever you want. You can come in here and put connections, your input connections and your output connections on here. You can label it. And obviously, each one of these function codes actually get a function code number. From 0 to 2,000 are reserved by R&D at ABB. So anywhere over 2,000, you could use those numbers. Here, I just use 2,500. So say I went through and I created this whole, I filled all this stuff in and I created my function code. Now I want to move that function code into a project. So how do I do that? So what you would do is you would right click and say create package. And basically you just write in this CFP package to the hard drive. You're actually just going to give it a destination of where you want it to go. And then there's a selection here called enable block protection. This is what makes that function code a black box that Chen had talked about earlier. If you wanted it to be able to, when you compile it, to be able to look in the CFG and see all the internal blocks, you can uncheck this box. Or if you want it to be just show as a function code in when you're doing the configuration view, you would check it and it would be a black box then. So we have created a function code. Now we're going to move that to another project. So when you call up this project, this is the CFC project. I already had to call it up just for time. When you want to install a CFC, there's 2 new functions in S+ Engineering: install function code and uninstall function code. So if you make changes, you want to uninstall it, you can uninstall it. So we would do install function code. We would browse. We would pick your CFC that you want, and you would put the block function code number that you want it to be there, which would be 25500. Okay. So I've already done this. So if I were to go into the Exchange folder, and as a normal function code in the list, and go to the bottom, you'll see at 2500, there's my CFC. Now, if I were to go onto the CLD, it would appear that's my function code. That's how I dropped it. So if I wanted to drop another one on this drawing, I could just come here. You come here and just drag and drop it right on the drawing. And there it is. Okay? So again, this would require, you know, for you to put block numbers on it, things like that. You see at the bottom here where the specifications. If I were to double click on this guy, here's the values, and here's the description of what all the specifications are for this exact function code. So just like a normal function code, it doesn't look any different. So the only thing that's kind of different is the block number. Up here you'll see in the brackets it'll be 100 to 157. That's telling you there's 157 blocks inside this function code. And auto block, routine, and stuff all understands that, so you'll never have any problem with block numbering when you use auto block. You'll see that you have the ability to assign tags. If I right click and I go to tags, you can see there's 3 tags here. And you could, you know, I could say edit, and I could edit the tag, you know, however I wanted. Now those tags will just look like normal tags. If I call up the data browser, you'll see that there's 3 tags in the data browser. They're all 3 MSDDs. They have the exact block numbers. You know, you could drag these to your tag list and send it to the console. So that's basically an overview of CFCs. What I'll do now is we'll go into this thing with the soft controller. So what we got here is, if you can look, there's a small green little circle here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that with your monitors. But if you look, it's already enabled. So I can disable it or re-enable it. So right now it's enabled. You will not be able to enable it unless you have a compilable CFG. So it waits until you actually have a CFG. And I just made a simple drawing that had the executive blocked on it, just something simple to show some values. So if I come up here and I say go live, you'll see now that my seconds, it's running. So it's actually emulating that executive block. And if you had, you know, multiple logics in here, you could, you know, have some on-off blocks to force some values through, and you can actually see how your logics will react live, which is really nice feature. We use this a lot now. And then again, if you wanted to remove it, you just have to come here and just say disable soft controller, and then now it's off. All right. So that's how easy that is. I mean, there is some configuration setup, as Chin had said, in the Harmony API. So if you look down here, on number 20 is considered Harmony Soft Controller, and we have a new physical ICI called Harmony Soft Controller, HSC. So this is all you got to do. You set this up, you tell it what computer it's running on, and it's running. It's that easy. You can run one soft controller on each engineering workstation. So if you had 4 or 5 clients, you could run a soft controller on each one of those, and you could run a different controller on them. The one thing it does not do, it does not talk between controllers. It only talks directly with the controller on the machine that you're emulating. But it's really easy to set up. Okay. There's something else we want to talk about is the new bulk features, as Chin had mentioned. I've got a couple CLDs here, so we'll go to bulk engineering now. Excuse me. So there's three features to bulk engineering. The first one and the last one we're not going to cover right here, but we'll actually do the data editor. But the IO list management, what this allows you to do, it allows you to take an Excel spreadsheet of all your IO and actually import it into the system and create all your externals. If you have SDIO hardware or S800 hardware, it'll actually go and create your whole structure. It'll drop the CLD, it'll put the tags on it, the descriptions, the cross-references, miscellaneous text on the side of the border, it can fill it all in. So with IO list management, you can also go in and you can assign IO and move it between channels and things like that. That's the whole webinar in itself there, but this is a really good feature. CLT instantiation is exactly what it is. If there were templates on here, you know, so I don't know if any of you ever use ADG, auto generator tool. You can make a template, a CLD template, and then you can put codes on that drawing. And then as you select the template, you can then instantiate that multiple times in your controller. But what I wanted to get to was this data editor. So as Chen mentioned, we removed the CLE, Control Logic Editor, out of the system, which was actually another license that you had to have. So now you have the ability to be able to come here and text, pick what you want to extract out. Text, IREFs, OREFs, tags, specs. You want to list them vertical or horizontally, or your actual CLDs. So if I come in and I say tags, I can pick the control network that I want to pull it from, and the actual controller. And then in here, I can actually pick, which CLDs do I want. Say I just want to pick CLDs 3 and 4. Okay, and then I just hit execute. And then it'll go out, it'll read those 2 CLDs. And it'll pop up. So there's only 2. So there's this alarm 7, 8, and 9. So these are the 3 function codes that are on CLD3. On CLD4, there are none with tags. I can change these tags if I wanted to. I could change the description, and then I could say update CLD, and it would update all the drawings. What's also nice about this is you can actually navigate from here. If you don't know what this drawing was, you could right-click on the CLD. I should call it up. There it is. So it takes you right there and highlights your block for you. So this is the actual block that you're looking at, which is nice for ease of navigation back and forth. If I can come back here, I can extract tags or specs. I can do the same thing. These same drawings. You hit execute. I'll extract all the data from the 2 CLDs. And now this is all the information that you have on there for specs. So say you wanted to go ahead and filter and you only wanted to see the manual set constants for some reason that are in here. I could come in here and I could filter on just those. And it's really nice because you don't have to take it out to an Excel file now and try to manipulate it. But if you wanted to, up here in the top left corner, you can export to Excel and re-import from Excel. So you can export it, make all your changes offline, re-import it, run update, and it'll update all your drawings. So we're trying to make it a little bit easier to extract stuff. You can do IREFs, OREFs, and of course the CLD names. So this is the nice enhancement with the data editor. It's a lot clearer, and again, you can navigate from here back to your CLDs whenever you need to. All right, so those are the 3 things I wanted to show you. I'm going to send it back to Bart.
Thank you, Bob. We do have another poll here, Renaud.
Yeah, so guys, thank you for taking the time to attend the webinar. We did have another question for you guys is, based on what you saw, what do you think will most benefit you at your facility? We spoke about standardization for Windows 10 Server 2016. Is that something that will benefit you? We spoke about the soft controller for checkout and commissioning. Maybe that will be something that's of interest for your facility. The integration of S+ operations and engineering with a single database and no manual export import. Is that something that will be more interest for your facility? Or the CFC, where Bob Beggett, he created a customized function code and then went in there and put it as a regular function code. Will that be of more interest to you? So what we're going to do is just understand from you guys, maybe one of these is what's interesting to you, or maybe that's something that's not in the list here is your bulk engineering tool. Maybe that's of most interest to you. So just take a couple of minutes, think about it, think about what is most relevant for you at your facility and let us know, and we can follow up later with more details.
And let me just say, too, we have been getting some questions in through the Q&A panel there. We'll address them here pretty soon here in just a minute. But go ahead if you have if you have questions, go ahead and just type them into the Q&A panel. And right now, that the soft controller seems to be a pretty popular feature.
Okay. Nope, that's good. So take a couple more minutes to think about the poll and give your answers before we close it. The next thing that I want to talk about is, how do we get more information, right? So within ABB University, we have a couple of courses that are out. and scheduled for October and November. One is the SD series configuration, so that goes into configuring your Symphony DIN hardware and controller. The other one is going into the S Plus engineering tool itself. Both have classes either in Cleveland or in Georgia near Atlanta. So we have 2 classes that are scheduled in October and November. The second thing I want to talk about is the new office in Cleveland. So we have relocated to a new office. It's state-of-the-art 2020 workplace, and with that we also have a customer experience center. So if you want to know more about Symphony DIN, Symphony Plus engineering, operations, understand where is the technology heading towards, what is R&D working on, let us know through your account managers, and we'll be more than happy to schedule a visit here and make a day or half a day visit to address exact issues or concerns or technology roadmap that will be beneficial for you in your site. The next thing that I want to talk about, if my slide changes, is based on the feedback from the previous webinars. We took a poll to see what is of interest for you to see for your facility. And the number one was upgrading the control network. So in October, there's going to be a webinar where we'll go in and talk about upgrading your existing central or satellite ring from the traditional coax to the Ethernet backbone. Okay, so there's a module called SPENM01. So we'll go into the details of that. We'll also talk about the IEB 800, which is your Infinite to Ethernet bridge. And we'll talk about how they coexist together and how we can work to upgrade, like I said, the backbone from the coax to Ethernet. So that's going to be in October. In November, we'll be talking more about high-performance workplace. We want to go in and talk about, how do we help the operator be more effective? How do we increase the productivity of your operator and of your plant? So this is more of, the high-performance concept. We'll talk in relation to S Plus Operations HMI. We'll talk about the new features and functionalities that will help you be more efficient at your site. So those are the 2 things that are upcoming in October and November. As time progresses, as we get more feedback and more involvement, obviously we'll talk about the webinars that will come up after that. Let me try to change my slide here. The last thing I want to leave before opening the floor for Q&A is save the date. We have set the dates for ABB Customer World for 2019. It will be between March 4 and 7 in Houston. So we encourage you guys to spread the word in your facility, and you guys also save the date and make sure you attend the Customer World. Here we'll talk about not just control system, but what is ABB doing as a company? Where are we heading towards? What are the latest solutions we have? Where is automation heading towards? What are our innovations that we are doing and seeing for the next 3 to 5 years? So I definitely encourage you to save the date and make your travel plans to come and see us. You'll get to see our R&D people, our product management, our senior management, our engineering folks, and see what is our experience and where is the automation heading towards from an ABB perspective. I guess with that, Bart, I'll open the floor back to the Q&A, and Chen and Bob can answer most of the questions that we have.
Yeah, so I think the first question here we had for Chen, the question is, are MFP controllers supported with soft controllers?
Yeah, the short answer is no. Soft controller only supported the new, we call SD series. That's the DIN ray mounted controller, HPC 800 and SPC 700. That's the only controller type supported for soft controller.
Another question we have is about in S Plus Operations 2.04, tag management was kind of a pain. Adding tags to all the servers had to be manually updated. So he's asking us to speak to what features we've added to S Plus Engineering to allow configuration of tags and the management of them.
Yeah, actually, I think for Symphony Plus Operation 3.1, this new operation engineering can help a lot. In the past, I think it's like if you configure a tag in Composer database, it's just not complete. There's some fields are not available in Composer database, so you need to maybe work out of the Composer environment to do this tag management. But with this new operation engineering integration, you got the full operation database just on your engineering station. So the composer database will still be there with the new workflow, but most field will be somehow disabled. So you will work directly in the operation tag database. So you will get a more universal management experience. But if you are not upgrading to the operation new version, you are still staying with the operation 2.0, and then you have to work in the older workflow as before. So to get the full benefit, you need to upgrade both engineering and operation to the latest version.
Yeah, and to add to that, Ken, the manual exporting of database from Composer and importing in S+ operation, that is what is eliminated. With having an integrated database between engineering and operation, any change that's done in engineering is automatically pushed into operations. So now you don't have to worry about manually, because I think the question was to deal with manually updating the two databases and keeping them in check. That is just automated into the system now.
Okay, there's a question here about going from Composer to S+ engineering and the Sentinel level that might be required.
Yeah, it's covered by the Sentinel. It's required by Maintain Plus. So I think that's quite a basic one. Yeah. So yeah, if you with such level or above, yeah, there's no cost. There's a mapping guide you can refer to. So what you had the feature in Composer or even in WinTour, they will be mapped to the new feature to the Symphony Plus engineer.
And then we have a question about S+ features that require purchasing another license.
Yeah, there's a couple of new features. They will require additional license. The soft controller will require license, so you need to buy it. And the operation engineering, when you work with operation 3.1, this integrated operation engineering will require new license. In the price book, there's a 3-level basic, advanced, and what's the another one? Yeah, there's a 3-level. So you can refer to the user menu and to find out maybe more detail when you decide to upgrade. The CFC, the configurable function code, that also is a licensed feature.
So we have a question here about exporting. This person exports the tag database numerous times from Composer, and he's asking how much time would it take in S+ engineering to export 9,000 tags into Excel?
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
We have to get back on that. I don't know the exact. I mean, just a few minutes. It wouldn't be any longer than that.
And then a question about what about 800XA as opposed to S+ operations for tag database integration?
Yeah, for 800XA, this new operation engineering only work for the operation 3.1. So for 800XA, it's basically work as before. So you still need to work in, we call control engineering or Composer database to define all your tags and then export to a file, either MDB or is there Excel file?
Excel.
Yeah, and then you need to import into the 800XA aspect server.
Yeah, thank you very much for the hour that you've given us here. And from everybody at AUB, thanks for watching.